clerk. So those are the three officers of the FinCom. One other thing that we'll touch upon a little bit later is we'll talk about this advisory group we have called the Buy Board. And traditionally on the Buy Board, it's an open meeting, anybody can come, but traditionally the chair and the vice chair of the FinCom have attended those meetings. That doesn't mean that others can as well. We'll talk about that later. So as the moderator opened the meeting, as this is a unique circumstance, since this is the reconstitution committee, moving forward, the chair would sort of do what he did in the beginning. So with that, you should consider organizing respectfully who would be a chair, vice chair, and clerk, and that would usually be by a motion and seconded.
I would like to motion to have Mr. I can't quite pronounce the last name.
Oh, Freskowski.
Krakowski. I would, in my view, I think we should elect Mr. Krakowski as the chair.
So I have a motion on the table to elect Kurt the chair. The motion, we need a second.
I'll second.
Mr. Celia, second. Okay, you're all seconded. on Kurt. Would anyone like to discuss this?
Do you want to do it? Yeah, I would, yeah, I can do it, and I think Robert, you made a good point, is that the vice chair is, it's important to have that because I do travel. So, I mean, I mean, just like any of us travel, so, no, the whole idea of that is, yeah.
Thank you, Kurt. So I'm going to ask for a roll call vote. Put you last this time, Kurt. Jen, how do you vote?
I.
Thank you, Sebastian.
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
It's unanimous. And I now turn over the running of the meeting to you. You're now the chair. And actually, if I would ask you to sit at the head of the table.
This is the head.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
We would turn the people next
That's
to
good.
me.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I will have to help these.
If I may, you mind?
No.
Okay, I was gonna say, the next one would be a vice chair.
Oh, okay.
So any nominations
So,
for a vice chair?
do we have any nominations for a vice chair?
I'll nominate Andrew. I was gonna nominate you. Sure.
I think the more important one is the clerk, because the
clerk.
clerk is the person who actually has to do a lot of the work. Yeah, so the clerk has to be present every single time. So you two, I think that we should discuss if we can. More.
What do you, how do you feel? If you feel good with, I mean, so how often are the meetings? Is it every month? Because I would hate not to be here and then not be.
Feast your family kind of thing.
So historically, the finance committee has generally met every other week, so twice a month on a regular schedule. In the event that the clerk is not present at the meeting, usually someone else at the meeting will just simply take the notes.
Okay.
There is that flexibility around it. The other thing I'll just offer is the requirements for the finance committee are to have a chair and a clerk. The vice chair is not required, but it is recommended to have that, because then if the chair is not here, you have that go-to person who's going to run the meeting, as opposed to people looking at each other trying to figure out who's going to run. So I do recommend filling all three positions if you have that capability.
And you will all get used, you'll all get used to this, it will be second nature.
Whatever. It would be easier for me if I don't do the minute piece of it. If that's okay. That's fine. Awesome. Thank you.
You're good with Word?
Yes, it's the 21st century.
I'm showing my
I'm
age.
happy to bring a computer and type.
Oh my, I really should. All right, so then what I'm hearing that we have a motion for Sebastian to be chair. I mean, vice chair. Vice chair. So we have a second on that. Well, that's second.
Oh, I got a second then? Yeah. Aye.
Okay, so, all right, so we have a motion for Sebastian Cordova as vice chair and a second, and we'll go around and vote. Jen, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Sebastian, how do you vote?
Aye.
Andrew, how do you vote?
Aye.
Kurt Proskowski, I vote aye. So move seconded and approved to have Sebastian as vice chair. And then we move to the clerk. And we have a nomination or motion for the clerk.
I move to nominate Andrew as the clerk.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to have Andrew Sealy as clerk. Sebastian, start with you. How do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Andrew,
Aye.
Kurt Proskowski, I vote aye. And Jen,
Aye.
aye. So moved, second and voted that Andrew Sealy will be clerk of the finance committee.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
if that's up to you or Mr. Sealy, I have started the minutes up to this point. I can finish them for tonight. On behalf of the committee, send them to Andrew, and then moving forward, he would do them.
Does that sound?
Is that all right with you, or?
Fine by me.
Okay,
I can type them up and send them.
Yep.
I don't think it's a public record.
yep.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, so, going down the agenda, we done the organization, and I guess we're going to move to the following the agenda, overview of roles and responsibilities, and item one is Scott.
Good, close enough.
Okay,
I was in this town hall for about 6 years before people started pronouncing it correctly, so it's fine. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to introduce myself in a little more detail. My name is Scott Hood. I am currently serving on the select board. Before I was on the select board, I served on the finance committee from 2008 to 2017, I believe. I will personally say when I started finance committee, I was all like you, had no idea what I was doing. And learned as I went. I want to stress that I am not here on behalf of the select board. I am not here to tell you what to do. I am here for information. I'm going to start walking you through just the things that I did when I was on finance committee, what the historical responsibilities have been, and give you some examples of some of the one-offs that may come up from time to time. Please feel free to reach out to me for information. I'm perfectly happy anytime to answer any questions that you may have. Mr. Tillotson has asked if I can attend some of the meetings just to at least be available as questions arise. But I do want to stress, I am not here as a member of the select board. I'm here as a private citizen. And honestly, as a private citizen, I feel having a strong independent finance committee is in the best interest of our community. So a couple of things I do want to go over. The first thing is, if you go to the town website, there is a mission statement for the finance committee. And that mission statement was developed about 10 years ago when I was chair. We had a really good crew. So we put together what the mission of the finance committee is. And I'd like to read that out loud. The responsibility of the finance committee is to act in the best interest of the taxpayer. The finance committee is the representative and advisory committee for town meeting, the legislative body in the town of Ayer. The committee's primary responsibility is to present a balanced budget for annual town meeting, which provides an efficient use of available funds by maximizing revenue streams and ensuring expenses are quantified. The committee reviews and provides recommendations on all monetary municipal warrant articles. The committee provides information on its town of Ayer's financial health, execution of financial processes, and financial efficiency for voters to make educated decisions. Final decision-making responsibility rests with elected officials and those who vote at town meeting and general election. So it sounds like a lot. And as you learn it, it will be a lot, but it'll also become second nature. So the primary thing is you serve town meeting, which is the legislative body. And the way I always viewed it is The select board is the executive body that meets every other week and throughout the year runs the operations. On the legislative side, the annual town meeting meets generally twice a year. So the finance committee is kind of that more often every other week extension of the legislative body to keep in touch with what's going on, so that when town meeting does come together, you can present information to town meeting. In regards to the budget, we present a balanced budget as required by law. How we put that budget together is really part of where the finance committee comes in. The select board will work on their budget. With the administration, we collect the information, we share it with the finance committee. When I was on the finance committee, we would run parallel budgets. We would have our own budget that we would go through and we would look at, and there were times that we did not always agree, which is always good to have because you want to be able to have those hard conversations from time to time. Generally, when we went into town meeting, other than maybe 2 or 3 times, we did not fully agree on a budget. But we did a presentation saying, well, this is what the finance committee believes, and this is what we recommend. For town meeting, on the warrant articles, you'll see whether there's a financial impact. So the fall town meeting right now, there aren't, well, there's technically 2, but there aren't really any. There's 4 on the fall town meeting, 2 road acceptances, and is it bylaw changes, the other 2?
No.
CPC, thank you.
Yeah.
So there's the 2 CPC.
Sorry.
ones.
No,
No, it's okay. So generally going into a town meeting, you would either get whatever necessary information, maybe ask someone from CPC to come to a meeting and gather, just kind of walk you through what they're asking, et cetera. And then just vote a recommendation is really what you're being asked to do. For the annual town meeting where the budget is involved, the budget is the primary responsibility for the finance committee. The budget process will be starting in October, and it will be busy for about 3 to 4 months. So historically, and I want to speak historically, when I first started, we would get the budget directive information from the administration in November, December timeframe. The departments would submit their budgets early January. I think that's moved up to late December so that everything can be sent to the board and also the committees in early January. The finance committee would actually meet, and again, this is how it's historically done, so don't panic. They would historically meet with each department, each board, and each committee over the course of 3 to 4 weeks during January. And in that time, the finance committee would absorb information on what's in the budget, why are they doing it. And from where I started to when I left, we had morphed it down where it was more, we met with the 4 big ones: fire, police, administration, and DPW, because that's a huge part of your expenses. The committee will be invited to a presentation of the school committee, of the Ayer Shirley Regional School Committee budget presentation, which they do at the select board meeting. So you'll join us for that. And that's where you get your information for that. The ability to meet with the departments is very important in just information. And as new members, I would actually highly recommend you meet with as many people as possible, because talking budget at a select board meeting, it's usually a 15-minute agenda item. Being able to sit down with the fire chief for an hour and talk through, how many people are in the department, what are their run times, what equipment is needed, what are the challenges, what are the successes, what do you see coming down the pipeline, and being able to do that with any of the departments is actually invaluable. It's great information for the citizens to have, because your meetings are videotaped, but it's also for yourself. It helps you formulate what that budget is and how it's coming together and how it's being utilized. And I do want to stress, one of the things that I believe is that a budget is a presentation of the values of a community. So it is what we choose to put our money towards and fund and bring into our society. So I want you to please keep that in mind. Actually, I heard that at a town finance committee meeting, regional meeting years ago, and it's always stuck with me. Sorry, I'm going through my notes, making sure I'm not missing anything. So in addition to the budget, occasionally you'll have major projects that might have a financial impact. And the things that come to mind are regionalization of the schools. When that occurred, the committee did a lot of analysis working with the school committee to make a recommendation on that, and in doing calculations to show what we thought the impacts were going to be. The high school project was a similar item. I mean, I think this is personally, I always like as a finance committee, wanting to confirm that the tax numbers were correct. So the assessor will give a number or the finance manager will give a number. This is what the tax impact is going to be. From the finance committee perspective, I always wanted to make sure we could back into those same numbers just as a confirmation. And then other items, like there was the attempt to put housing at Vicksburg Square in Devon's. There was, we looked at it purely from a financial impact and dug into that. So that you'll have those one-offs that do come up from time to time. Outside of the budget, it really kind of pertains to what the committee wants to do. I would recommend probably spending some time and reviewing some of the documentation that we have in your first year. The budget will finish up usually in early April. Town meeting is in May. So the summertime, we would meet only once a month if we met at all. Sometimes July, there's nothing really going on, so we wouldn't really meet. But there's a set of financial policies that we're currently, board is currently in the process of updating, but those were initially developed by members of the finance committee. They've been updated, I think, 2 or 3 times since then. That will kind of walk you through the processes of how we do things from a financial perspective. It was developed as a roadmap of how we budget and spend our money and go about calculating things. And then, once you get into the fall, you're kind of getting back into the whole budget situation back in October. So for informational purposes, where to get information and learning, Robert Pomfrey, town manager, is a absolute amazing reference point for anything in the town. He was a huge help to the committee when I was on it. And also myself, I'll offer that up if you just have any one-off questions. I'm perfectly happy to provide anything. There's also Mass Municipal Association, MMA.org. They have a website that you are able to get access to specifically for town finance committees. And in there, you'll find forums, you'll find training materials from previous regional meetings that they have. And I do believe that their regional meeting is November 6th, I believe, 5th or 6th. I believe so.
Either Saturday or Sunday, typically before around election time. Yeah, I think that's so.
And if you choose to attend there, it was in Franklin the years I went. I think it might be in that area again. But if you do choose to go, they have different breakout sessions and presentations. One of them is Budgeting 101 that they offer every single time, which is fantastic. I've sat through that one actually twice over my times going, and I think I've learned something each time. And even just having the ability to talk with other members of finance committees is actually very good and kind of can at least get you thinking about what to do and how you want to do it. So that's what I have in my prepared notes. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those at this time.
I guess my first of all, thank you.
Welcome.
Is, so you mentioned that FinCom actually keeps a budget themselves. Do we have a current copy of that somewhere?
So historically, that's the way we did it, and I'll give you the background to that. So the first year I was on finance committee, it's like we had our chair had about 6 months of experience, and then 4 members who were fresh and new coming in the fall for the budget cycle. And we were kind of hands off with the budget. We were just kind of following along. We were gathering information. We met with all the departments, which was very informative. But at the end, we talked amongst ourselves after town meeting. We were like, we should really be driving that. So I do have, what I would use is actually the detailed file that the finance manager would provide. And just, so basically you have a starting point of what's submitted by the departments. And then, you go through and look at what they're asking for. And usually, there'll be notes for increases, particularly of what the increase is for. And then, that's kind of your point that you wanted, something kind of raises a flag, you want to ask questions around that, and that's where the meeting with the department heads comes into play. And then as we go through different iterations, and from our perspective, we're going to try to do a change, or more like a change form. So we have the original budget, and then we're going to put out a second version, which will just show it changed by X amount of dollars. So here's the new balance. So you can see as it goes, because the budget is a very fluid document up until the point that it gets approved for town meeting. The warrant gets approved for town meeting. So there's generally 4 or 5 versions that we can go through, I think, before everything is final. But we're going to try to hold the information so it's more manageable. So the finance manager will send the file to you, and that can be your starting point as the budget. And then if you have, as you're going through your budget process, if you have either questions or differences, you have that file to mark up and then follow up with and discuss on your own outside of meeting with the by board or the select board.
So, so again, I don't want to get too far down the weeds, but technically right now, we don't have any FinCom budget.
Correct.
So
We have the 23, but sorry. Place, but I can send that to you and have you look at that.
And so, and then. We're on 7/1/22 to 6/30/23, correct?
Correct.
So essentially, at this point, we would just be looking at the existing town budget and reviewing it and getting used to looking at that.
That would be a good
Yeah,
starting
send
point,
it
to
to
be
you, see
honest.
what and then when you get the submissions from the department, you're gonna compare, actually have that on the document, someone would imagine. Prior years, current years,
I was gonna ask that if
Yeah.
you could compare it to the past
Yeah.
years. Or kind of like
definitely.
So that's what. We could go way down to the weeds, but I just want to see the sort of the big pictures.
I think once the process gets started, you'll get a better idea.
Seems like a learn by doing sort of situation.
Yeah.
And we're all here to help. I mean, my emails, phone calls, whatever you need, I'll be there.
So it was interesting going to my town hall back in the spring and hearing folks, as everything was presented, and then people were, well, how did anybody look at this? Did anybody look at that? And this is the FinCom's role here, is that, hey, folks, yes, the FinCom, which is by itself, volunteers, looked at this.
And if I may, you'll also get challenges from the select board. Did you look at this? Because you don't, Mr. Hood said, he's not here as a select board member, he's here as a past member to talk about this. They work on their budget, you work on your budget. As you become more comfortable with it, there may be situations where you're discussing it.
And if I could just add on to that, I really want to stress what Scott said, a town meeting as a the finance committee as a committee of town meetings. And structurally, you are independent by design to represent the town meeting on, we do many important things, but the budget is a huge piece. You are the independent review and check on that, as Scott has mentioned. You also have the authority to have formal positions on the financial articles in the warrant, as Scott mentioned. Fred will talk in a minute about some of your other responsibilities, but to stress that too, as the town manager, you don't report to me. I just want to make that clear. I'll talk about my role in a minute. You're independent of myself, select board, and so forth. They're just appointed by the moderator to represent town meeting. But as Fred said, we're all in the same boat, if you will. We're here as a resource to work together. And all the entities we've just listed, we're not always going to agree. And the goal is to try to get to consensus. And sometimes we get to the town meeting, there still may not be agreement on things. And ultimately, then it rests with the voters at town meeting.
An observation. I'm trying not to run. I see it as a chair. No, I see my role as a facilitator.
Numbers on the booklet that's printed before the town meeting. So those numbers, who decide those numbers? They like each word article, there's a, the budget figure. So were those the ones that agreed, or were those the ones that?
So as we go through the process, and not to get way down in the weeds, but the select board, when we use the word, they have authority over the warrant to determine what goes on the warrant or doesn't, including the version of the budget that goes onto the warrant. However, so we will have worked, the goal is again about consensus through the process to come up to those with those final say articles and so forth. As you probably have seen, at the bottom it'll say sponsor, select board, and then it'll say finance committee, where we could put, the position. In some cases, in many cases, the finance committee agrees. In some cases, the finance committee may disagree and have an alternative presentation, or there may not even be consensus. We usually put the vote, if there's 5 members, but the vote is there. You also specifically, not to get way down into the weeds, but if you look at the town's bylaws, I think it's the first bylaw, you have the authority to report to town meeting on the budget. And Scott mentioned that. So when we get to town meeting, when we get to the omnibus article, now you didn't see this past spring because there wasn't any FinCom at that point. But at that point, we usually have a budget presentation that we try to come to consensus on and have you involved with. However, with a full FinCom, you may have a completely different presentation, if you will. So the short answer is we try to, through the process, come to consensus on all of these things. And overall, we generally do are pretty close. However, if there is differences, those should be formally put in the warrant. And you'll also find, Jen, at town meeting sometimes, people from the floor will just ask on Article 6 or on the budget, where does the finance committee stand on this and so forth?
But I think that is my understanding correct, that at town meeting, people will either vote to approve the warrant article or not approve that. So there's no option there to modify that. Say that.
So on a
Turn down
budget,
the
sorry.
number, so-
And so on a budget, when that's being discussed, there are changes that can be requested. An amendment to the budget can only reduce funding. You cannot increase funding to propose because I think it's actually statutory law. You can't increase, so for example, if use something easy with, say the finance committee budget's $500, which it is. So you can't go into town, someone at town meeting can't say, well, I want to increase that to 1,000, but they can say, well, I want to decrease it to 300. That's allowed, but increasing it is not. And that's actually part of, there are times you will see that as we go through the budget. We've had town meetings where the budget has gone on for hours, so to speak, because town meeting will walk through the budget, the moderator will go through each of the departments, someone will say pass, which means that they want to come back for further discussion. when we go back, have discussions, and whether it's questions, sometimes it's an amendment, and then of course, if there's an amendment, you have discussion around the amendment, then you vote on the amendment, then you vote on the article, so there's a full process that goes through, but once the budget itself is set in the article, it is not 100% final, which is why if there is a difference between the finance committee and the select board in the few years that we have had it, I think one year we actually had in the warrant, I think we had the budget and then we had the FinCom budget actually next to it, because we had 3 or 4 lines that we differed on.
Yes.
So there's ways that we'll work through presenting that and making sure that the finance committee's opinion is there and what their recommendation is.
And then, of course, the outcome of the town meeting, the voters votes outcome.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, town meeting holds all final authority on spending.
Correct.
I love town meeting. Last one was great.
Fred?
Yeah. Ready, Kurt?
Yes.
I think Robert wants me to speak about this because at the end of this year, end of the fiscal year, we didn't have a finance committee. And this is about the reserve fund.
Mhm.
Reserve fund is a sum of money that is, we'll say, put aside, but it's actually part of the budget. That generally it gets raised and appropriated like everything else. It can only be, we're in town, so it can only be 5% of prior year's budget, which is over $1 million. So that's not gonna happen because it's usually about 300,000, I believe. And it's up to the, it's for anything extraordinary and unforeseen that happens during the year. Say a department has an HVAC unit that just dies and they don't have the money in their budget. They will submit a request for a reserve fund transfer. And they'll submit it to me and I'll give it to Robert. And typically in most towns, finance committee signs off on those. You'll have a meeting, you'll discuss it, I'll probably be there too. And then you'll vote on it, and then the money will be moved. In Ayer, there's an extra step, the select board also has to approve it. So between the two of you, I don't know how you would resolve it if one does and one doesn't. I've never seen that situation before, but.
If I may. So the stipulation in Ayer is if it's for a department, it needs select board approval and also finance committee approval. If it's for an elected official, then it is only finance committee, which we don't see that as often since we reduced our number of elected positions.
And this is, I've been here since April. I've done this job for 25 years, but I've only been here since April. So I had to learn some of the procedures that we go through here too, so.
And he's still smiling.
But
It's back every day.
But it's typically up to the, for you guys to discuss, is it legit, is it extraordinary, is it unforeseen? And then make up your mind from that.
And I think you nailed it. HVAC, heating system goes out in December. You gotta heat the building, you've got to go to work. So.
I mean, I think that's pretty much it, unless you have questions about that.
Just to add, Fred, thank you
Please.
on that. So, again, this is a key function that you all have. Also, as we move forward, as Fred mentioned, the reserve fund, since the pandemic, we had increased it to 300,000. Historically, it had been at about 150,000. But of course, when we entered into the period of unknown, and we're still there. But one of the things, this didn't really happen last year again, because I hate to keep coming back to, we didn't have a FinCom, but we'll be looking to you also as the FinCom for your recommendation and input on the level of that fund. Not to get in the weeds, but you play a key role in the recommendation of what that should be. And then on the extraordinary and unforeseen, and we can talk more in detail. I know the buy board has been looking at that, is further tightening that up. So the other thing is why there's a process. When we say extraordinary or unforeseen, Fred is actively monitoring the accounts, and if a certain department is approaching a deficit situation or so forth, he will alert myself, the FinCom, the select board. So we have, it usually plays more towards the end of the fiscal year. And there's a whole process, and we want to as there should be, because there should be control. So I just want to stress, it's not just somebody short on something or what have you. It's gonna be extraordinary or unforeseen. I think Fred you're passing out the,
Yeah, but I printed them out.
oh, yeah.
I could decide the finance handbook. Get one.
Yeah, and the second form, and this is on the website, this is the actual reserve fund transfer form, so this will all be completed when it comes to you. I usually, we require the department head, obviously, to appear before you and any or departments, for that discussion.
I think another thing to point out is this stuff usually happens at the end of the year when you guys probably aren't meeting that often. What we've done in other towns is we have, the board has voted, the committee has voted to say, have a chair sign off on it. You'll have whatever it might be your last meeting, or you think it's gonna be your last meeting, and assign it to the chair and give him the permission to sign off on them.
And then just the last piece, Mr. Chair, that I'll add to this, not to overwhelm, is generally it's towards the end of the year. We always also try to schedule the RFP during one of your regular scheduled meetings. But on occasion, just sort of an advance warning, sometimes the need presents itself and we have to schedule or respectfully request the scheduling of a special meeting for an RFP, but we really try to keep it as part of your standing agendas needed for scheduling purposes.
Right, because we can do these transfers up to July 15th.
Right.
So,
Has the town ever experienced like a running out of this?
We came close once.
We did come close
Yeah.
1 year. Do you want to speak to it again?
Yeah, so we came close once, and this was back before we were part of the region for Neshoba Valley Technical High School. So initially, which until I got on finance committee, I never realized we weren't an actual part of the region. We were just paying tuition to go for our students to go there. And it was a very volatile account or expense each year, depending on the number of students that decided to go there as opposed to go into Ayer High School at the time. So we got down to, I think it was down to like $15,000 left with like a week or two left in the season. So it has come close before. Generally, what we've looked at from the level of funding is, it's historically been about 150,000. We've reduced it over the years, and then we kind of put it back up to the 150 because, we've come across situations where we've had, cars break down, like a police cruiser, like where you can find that. And the general premise of it is, if a department can't pay for it out of their own budget, that's when the reserve fund transfer kicks in. So they try to cover some of the expense within their budget, because we do bottom line budgeting. So the budget will have, say, if you look at the police budget, it will have 40, 50 lines in the police budget. More than that.
no, less.
But that bottom total is what the chief can spend on the police department, and it doesn't matter how he spends it.
And I'm gonna put something here, having watched the fire and the police and the other departments actually make their presentation to the select board. They're not thinking about just tomorrow or just this year. They're looking at 5 and 10-year plans, especially in a situation where a fire truck has to be done. They're actually statutes on when you have to buy a fire truck. So he's got that, they're working on that all the time. And it's always in the back of their mind. So
and
they don't come up when they do pop up along vehicles and stuff.
I have seen
It's a real-
that the town has like actually like a special warrant article just to buy a.
Yeah, that's what.
Depending on how that gets financed, it gets.
Yeah, that's if it goes through the capital process, and then it becomes an article on town meeting. Spend article.
The other thing to remember is that the money that's not used will close back out to free cash, which will be another whole discussion.
That's what
I was gonna ask.
Yeah, that money just goes back to free cash, so.
Free cash, so it looked like with other.
Well, what happens at the end of the year, I knew I should have said that. At the end of the year, we submit our balance sheet to have free cash certified. And what free cash consists of is any extra revenues we receive or any unspent budgets. And that turns out to be our free cash. We send it to the DOR and they certify it. That money has to be voted at town meeting and used. So the great thing about it is all in the citizens' hands. They have to say yes. It's nothing that we can say. They have to vote on it. So any other question too, just, email me or call me and we can
But
discuss all of it.
when you send to DOR, do they send it back to you?
Yeah, they sent us a letter or an email.
Okay.
Actually, they say your free cash is, well, last year it was 2.5 million, I believe, right? Yeah,
So what can you apply that toward,
just about anything.
like,
Yeah,
okay,
what you don't want to do is use a one-time source for like an operating budget, because you use it 1 year, what if you don't have it the next year? You know what I mean? It's very like one-time deals.
got it.
But is the town encouraged to save money? So if you save money and in the end you have some surplus.
Well, they have
Do
the
you get to keep
DOR.
that and then, next year you have a little
More
bigger budget to work with, a bigger pie to start with?
Well, free cash flow, if you don't use all of your free cash, that'll go back into the pool, and then whatever happens during that fiscal year, extra revenues or, less expenses, it'll just add it back together. Generally, your free cash comes in about on average, whatever it is, whatever your town is, 1.2 or something like that, but.
And it's all subject also, and forgive me, to appropriation. So it's not like the free cash just comes here and few of us decide. It's subject to town meeting and,
Yeah.
and we'll get into this in more detail at future meeting. But for example, in the free cash, the town has historically, and we have policies on this, put some of that into capital stabilization or into the stabilization or for some other purposes. But again, that's all also a public process, and subject to town meeting.
That's
Yeah.
what I was wondering.
Yeah.
The Commonwealth has a rainy day fund.
Yeah.
but the
Yeah,
town Also,
that's what that
also
would
has a
be.
stabilization.
Yeah,
fund.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's separate from.
can say,
yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
correct.
definitely.
This is just, think of the reserve fund really for the operating budget as reality is we do our best to budget, right? And if everything was black and white and in a vacuum, it would be great. Life doesn't work that way. Think of it as it's for that unforeseen or extraordinary. And then there's that process. But we have a much larger stabilization and capital stabilization, which will.
And we should know our free cash number within a couple of weeks. We submit the balance sheet, so.
Mhm.
We'll
From,
know,
from last year.
correct, so we'll know what we have to work with. somewhere.
So if you didn't get it, they do the work, Fred does the work, community does the work, the town does the work, and then the work gets submitted to DOR and they bless.
Or not.
Well,
No, so
there's
generally,
a process,
generally they do.
Yeah.
there's a process to which it goes through, but there's another group watching it also.
Yeah.
And when you say DOR, you mean mass.
Massachusetts Department of Revenue, yes.
Department of Local Services. DLS.
So the idea for us is to be efficient with the budget, and that's the goal, and have some surplus for next.
Yeah, I mean, that's the general sense, and that's why, like, in the mission statement, we look to maximize revenue and, just be cognizant of our spending. We've had some really good influx of revenue that we didn't have 10, 15 years ago. We have the meals tax is doing very well. We have a meals tax, which goes towards our OPEB expense, other post and employment benefits. That's a whole nother discussion. There's a lot of acronyms as you go through this, but you'll learn them.
When you say, they just get meals tax as in a restaurant?
Yeah,
Yes.
That actually comes-
Local meals tax.
we do a local meals tax. We have a tax for cannabis,
The
which
cannabis
has
has
also
been-
been a boon to the town. So yeah, we've done well looking at maximizing revenue and honestly, I think as we increased our revenue sources, we've still been cognizant enough. I mean, the services that the town provides has grown, so we have had to grow with, adding personnel, et cetera, but we haven't not, in my opinion, we haven't gone crazy with it.
The reality of it is, if we were all perfect, we would have a budget that we would spend every penny. And we would have revenue coming in that we knew was coming in, and there would be no free cash. That just doesn't happen. So,
The reason I just mentioned it is, Jeff may know this, but I lived in the North Shore from 82 to 89, and I in Swampscott, and I ran in there. And one of the things that they did in the 80s was institute hotel tax.
We turned that,
So
that was
we-
turned down at town meeting because we only have 2 hotels.
Another thing that the citizens vote on, this wasn't,
Yeah,
right.
nobody can make that
It's
decision.
a source of revenue that the citizens.
Yeah,
vote on.
no, I was just curious because
Oh, yeah.
that was sort of a new thing back then as far, again, it's during my age.
So I can see that if a tax is too specific, only target a very small group of people, people would not like.
Yeah.
That's understanding. Yeah. Fair is, you know.
And I think as we move through and, in the interest of time, and we have a couple other topics for tonight, but as we move forward as through the chair, as a FinCom, if there's certain topics at your future meetings that you'd like to put on the agenda to discuss, I think that would be great too, and we would be happy as an information resource to attend, and maybe some other departments if applicable. So for example, like stabilization and capital stabilization, maybe that is, a brief future topic or what have you. And there's no bad questions, as I would say. You do learn by doing, right, Scott?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you, Robert, for reminding me to keep.
No, that's okay.
And and that brings yourself up.
Yes, so just.
I'm done, yes.
Thank you, Fred. So just very briefly, couple things. I just wanted to touch upon, how many are familiar with the Massachusetts open meeting law and the Massachusetts public records law? I don't want to, okay. So I just wanted to talk briefly about 3 core things, because they affect this committee and as we move forward. So the first is the Massachusetts open meeting law. So under state law, the FinCom is considered a public body. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that you can only meet and legally act with a quorum of the committee, first of all. So you're a 5-member body, so you need at least 3 for a quorum. And I know you have a vacancy right now, so you need at least 3 members. So that's the first key point. And this is just basics for it, is that you can only meet with a quorum. The second piece is you're required by law to post your meetings at least 48 hours in advance of the meeting. Okay, so you have to have an agenda like we had tonight, and I don't want to get all in the weeds because we have a system on this, we'll work with you, but you would come up with your agenda, and the agenda needs to be posted at least 48 hours in advance, and that's done through the town clerk. Posts it, it's posted, the official posting board is this posting board out here under law. So at a very minimum, it has to be there. We also post it on the website, but the minimum requirement. So you have to have a quorum. You have to meet in a posted meeting. So you can't just decide to, meet at least 48 hours in advance. And the third piece is you have to meet in a place that is accessible to the public. So generally and historically, since I've been here, the finance committee in person like tonight has always met here. So you can't meet at somebody's house, you have to meet in a place that's accessible to the public. So we generally try to advise a municipal building. The final piece, because the life wouldn't be interesting without a wrinkle, since the pandemic, as you're all aware, we are allowed right now under emergency provisions to meet remotely. This meeting tonight's actually a hybrid meeting, so we're meeting in person. We do have a resident here so it's open to the public, and we do have resident on the screen, so we have the remote provision as well. Something you may want to consider moving forward is what venue you would like to meet in. Where it stands now, you have basically 3 options. One is you could meet in person. You could meet all remote on the Zoom, or you could have a hybrid. When I say a hybrid meeting, we're asking that all of you are in present. We're offering the hybrid for the public. So just think of that. So the takeaway is quorum. You need to have a quorum. You need to post 48 hours in advance. Needs to be in a public place that's accessible to the public to attend, hence the open meeting law. There is on the town website, in the interest of time, there is the whole guide to the open meeting law. It is state law. It is a real thing. Violations of the open meeting law are serious. Most importantly is if a public body takes a vote. So say you had a meeting hypothetically, and there was an RFT. And either you didn't have a quorum, not that this is gonna happen, or you didn't post, and there was an open meeting law violation. That action is null and void. It's illegal to use the word. So that's something we need to just be cognizant of. We always, because people, oh, the open meeting law, it does have serious, implications in that sense. Don't want to belabor the point, get into the weeds. That's just a really quick snapshot. If there's any questions, myself or the town clerk or others are available. The second thing related to that is the Massachusetts Public Records Law. So as a public body, you are required by law to record the minutes of the meeting. Now, the minutes, and you'll see, you can look on the town website, you can see past FinCom minutes. Everybody has sort of a different format. There's also a whole guide on the public records, but just the takeaway on the minutes, you are required to take minutes of the meeting. The minutes should reflect who was in attendance. It should reflect any motions or votes. And the average person looking at the minutes should be able to glean the general essence of the discussion. Now, we do record most meetings like tonight and so forth. Regardless, we still have to have minutes. Those minutes have to be periodically reviewed by the FinCom and voted to be approved. And generally, when they're approved, they're usually signed by the clerk. And they're sent to the town clerk, who then stamps them. She keeps them on file, and we put them on the website. I know it sounds, but you just get into the flow of it. I think the takeaway is, and this happens to a lot of boards and committees, the key in my experience is if you can be approving the previous meeting minutes at your next meeting and get into that groove, that would be good. We also trying to get everything posted on the website, so when there is a public records request or inquiry, we could point them to the website as opposed to the town clerk or so forth. That's the last piece. Is under the public records law, any member of the public, doesn't even have to be a resident of Ayer, can make a formal public records request asking for, I'd like a copy of the February 15th, 2022 FinCom meeting minutes. Now, if they're right on the website, we can point them right to that, but a public records request is a formal request that we have to respond to within 10 business days. And I don't see that playing out largely here, but if it does, as the town manager, I'm also ultimately responsible as the records officer for the town. So as we move forward, if there's any questions on the open meeting law or the public records, don't hesitate to ask, and there's a lot of resources on the website. And then the final point is I put on here is working with town departments, and Scott really outlined the 50,000 foot view in the process very well. Again, as the town manager, I just, for your benefit, as the town manager, I'm an appointed position appointed by the select board. I ultimately report to the select board to them. The select board is the chief executive body responsible for all of the town's policy. They hire and fire my position, and I'm responsible, along with all of the department heads, Fred and others, to implement the policies of the select board and or actions of town meeting or other entities. Think of us as a resource. My main job is to, with the departments and Fred, is to prepare the budget. When I say prepare the budget, we'll go through the process, issue the budget directive. Think of us as we're really the administrative entity of it. You, the select board, and other entities will have sort of the policy input as we develop that. So I look forward to working with you. If there's ever any meeting you want me to come to, I will come to. Also, and the department heads know this, if myself or Carly Antonellis, the assistant town manager, or Fred, think of us as your three main point of contact. But if we can facilitate any information you need, or department head like you did guys decide, we would like to see the fire chief or what have you, that will make that happen. So I look forward to working with you moving forward. The last thing the other thing I should point out is any documents that are used at a public meeting are also a public record. So like, for example, Mr. Aponte passed out the RFP form, granted that's on the town website with this, but this is quote a public record. I just want to give to each of you that this is a draft of the town's budget calendar. I say draft because each year we put together a budget calendar, which is ultimately subject to approval by the select board. Obviously, as we move forward, we want your input. The select board approves it at the beginning of October. We're looking for October 4th. And this becomes the public calendar for the whole budget process. And if we have to change a date, we have to go before the select board to do it. Why is that? So we're not changing. We want to, and this has worked well. Scott and others brought this forth a few years ago to implement. So this is just an FYI for you. I'm not going to get into it tonight in the interest of time. The select board will be discussing this on October 4th, but this will give you a sense by each month of sort of the major benchmarks in the budget process. The other thing that I'm going to send to you electronically, Mr. Chair, to everybody because of the size, and we'll put this on your FinCom webpage. And that's one other thing I meant to mention. You have a webpage, FinCom. That's where you'll post your agendas and your minutes. And you should also use it as a repository to post your other information and documents moving
When
forward.
that posting goes through the IT manager.
Yes, that goes to the IT manager. So I will send,
Y'all met Cindy?
yeah, I will send to you.
For now, I'm gonna mess
Yeah,
up.
I will send to all of you, if we have a pretty smooth system, so Andrew, when you do the minutes, just so you know, we tried to make it as easy as possible, but two other documents, they're actually that I'll send electronically and put on your webpage as the Division of Local Services, and Fred suggested both of these, a guide to financial management for town officials. So we'll send you the link for this, and it'll be on your webpage. If you do want a hard copy, let me know. And the other one that Fred had is a municipal finance glossary. When Scott mentioned like OPEB and all of the language, like anything, this is a good resource. It's a glossary of all of the terms. So I'll send this to you electronically on that.
Thank you.
One final point, and I promise, final point, Dad for being long-winded, but it's a key point on the public records thing. The other thing that under the open meeting law, it's important that you not get into a situation where you're deliberating outside of a meeting. So whenever you discuss anything or what have you, it really should be in the public meeting. You do not want to get into a situation where we call deliberating outside, or what they call creating deliberations hard on email. What do I mean? Jen talks to Kurt about something. Okay. But then Kurt talks to Andrew about something, who then hits reply all to Kurt, Jim, and Sebastian. That's what you creates what they call pre-deliberation and deliberation that the public is not aware of. So you all have town email addresses. I think they were set up. The final point is use your town email address for everything related to the finance committee. Do not use your personal email. Now, I know in the beginning to get constituted, no harm, no foul. Moving forward, every email that you use, whether it's on your personal account or your town account for FinCom purposes, is subject to the public records. So it's best just keep all of your personal and your business stuff there and use the town account. And we have some further info on that on the website, which I'll send you. With that, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, a lot of information, brief period.
And may I just add one thing?
Yes.
As you look at the calendar for events and the finance calendar, the select board is the only board in town that broadcasts simultaneously during the meeting. I don't think there's a delay. It is available on channel 8, I believe, on our local cable. It's also available through APAC's website. So
they have two icons. Actually, I find it hard to figure out. One says live, one says recorded. So if you want to, you can actually attend select board meetings when they're discussing this stuff. October 4th. You might be doing something with the kids. You can jump in on the meeting. Mr. Pomprion publishes agendas with times on them. I'll tell you right now, the other boards I work with, we don't do times. We have a start and an end time. But they're pretty good to their time. They're pretty good.
That's Carly.
Carly and
Carly
Janelle
makes
is
that
pretty good,
happen.
cracks the whip.
Yeah.
And the select board's got a lot going on, so they're happy they made it.
Yeah.
So if you look at the thing, at this and say, oh, it's 7:25 tonight, they're gonna be discussing something about the budget. Pretty close to 7:25. So you don't have to go you don't have to come down here and sit in the meeting the whole time, is what I would say. And I find that honestly very helpful. And that's just through APAC and through the TV and through the local cable.
I think the other thing I'll offer is to just find a recording of a select board meeting or actually any of the meetings for board or committee and just kind of watch it, not necessarily for the substance, but for the protocol of how you do things, how you go through the budget, how you how you call votes, et cetera, just to get familiar with the way that the meetings are run, et cetera. Because I know, having sat there years ago, it feels very intimidating, but shortly it'll become second nature.
That's an excellent point, and maybe check out to an annual town meeting video. They're all on the website. The budget is usually within the first 5 or 6 articles. So what I'm saying, you could watch some of those to see the whole budget sort of piece play out. So there's a wealth of knowledge there too. Great,
Thank you very much.
yes.
Educational. So the next item is a proposal for a future joint meeting of the FinCom and Executive Buy Board. I'm going to assume that there is a Buy Board meeting already set, and we could join it, or do we need to?
Yes, I'll start, and I'm sure Scott will jump in on that. So as we mentioned earlier, back about 12 years ago, right before I came, it was called the Tri Board because we had the schools. But since then, we've had this Buy Board. And the Buy Board has consisted of a representative from the Select Board, the chair and vice chair of the FinCom. Now, keep in mind, these are also open meetings, so anybody can attend, and they do. So it doesn't mean that, okay, only 2 of you can come, you could all come. It consists of the town manager, the assistant town manager, the treasurer, tax collector, Barbara Tierney, and Fred Aponte, the finance manager. And what the Buy Board is, it has no statutory or legal or town bylaw authority. It was developed as an opportunity for representatives from the FinCom, the Select Board, and the key financial leaders within the departments to meet periodically to review and discuss major budgetary issues or financial issues and to make recommendations, keyword recommendations, to the Select Board or to the FinCom. Nothing the Buy Board does is binding. It's worked, I think, pretty well overall. So what Scott and I were discussing with the Buy Board at the last meeting, they meet, and I'll get to the, they meet at 2 o'clock on Zoom for now. So, and again, it's not mandatory, but we want your, input as we move forward. We thought we would like to propose that as many of you that can make it, we have a joint meeting of the Buy Board and the FinCom to accomplish 3 initial things. One is introductions again, so you can meet some of the others. 2, to sort of discuss further some of the things that we're about to start in the process. And then I guess the 3rd piece would be to get your input and see moving forward. So that's it in a snapshot. I may have missed something, or you may want to add to that.
I guess the only thing I'll add is, the Buy Board, the Tri Board, as it was originally, was really to just have communication between the schools, the finance committee, and the Select Board. It has morphed into more of a collective work group on the finance side to look at kind of the longer picture on a lot of things. as we kind of like we work through putting the calendar together for the budget, discussing any big items that we need to be aware of as we're going through. So, the finance committee participation in that is very important. My recommendation is, whoever attends that, next time you have a finance committee meeting, is give a 2-minute synopsis of what was discussed. And then the same thing for the representative on capital planning, just, because finance committee needs to have a representative on the capital planning committee also.
So when is this? Next meeting?
Real, it was October 25th, wasn't it, the day after town meeting? At 2.
I think it was.
Yeah,
I don't know if that
so
works.
right now, the next meeting of the buy board is Tuesday, October 25th at 2 p.m. on Zoom. And you're all invited, of course, they're open meetings, but you're all invited. Whether it's that meeting, what we're proposing is maybe that one doesn't work, but a future meeting where we had sort of a joint meeting to discuss.
And they are recordable.
They are recorded, they're posted. I take the minutes for them. They have their own webpage too, so you can check out that information as well. It's really an opportunity as a sort of an advisory sort of forum as we move forward. And we'd be interested, especially as newcomers to it, interested in any ideas of how we can make it more efficient or topics and so forth.
So what I'm hearing is that the buy board meeting is set up for October 25th, Tuesday,
Mhm.
2 p.m. and we should all, at least all of us, if possible, attend.
Yes.
Does that sound acceptable to the group?
Sure.
Do we need to vote on that or?
And if something goes on the calendar.
Okay,
You will, that will need to be a posted meeting if more than if 3 or more of you are gonna be there. And the posting can just simply be, you're gonna meet with
Attending by board meeting.
attending the buy board
I'll
meeting.
help you with postings.
For,
Yeah.
really for informational purposes, no deliberations will be made. And just from the open meeting law, it's also be cognizant of, like, for example, when you come to the select board meetings to say, sit through the school budget presentation, that will have to be a posted meeting. So it's not just when you have the meetings here, it's whenever there's 3 or more coming together occasionally. Like, for example, when we were going through the field projects, there were a multitude of meetings that were over at the middle school and the high school to go through like presentations on that, and both finance committees and select boards were invited like en masse. So therefore, everyone had to post their meetings, call to order at that meeting, and then adjourn.
And you think it's odd calling to order in a conference room, do it in a field somewhere. Planning board has to do that.
so then what I'm hearing then is maybe this sort of leads into the final item on the agenda is scheduling our next meeting. And what welcome input from this group and what have you vote is maybe we should meet for October 25th. The first meeting, just, I mean, what's,
I was wondering, Scott has an experience, so how would you recommend we meet next time?
Yeah, so my recommendation would be to have a regular meeting of the finance committee probably 2 weeks from today. And, with that, from thinking of agenda items, a good starting point might be a walk through the budget. I should be available to come and, we can get you the 2022 budget for you to peruse and look at. I'll see if I can find an old version of one of the finance committee budgets that I had put together. They're very similar formats. I'm an accountant, so every account has their spreadsheet style, so mine is a little different. And I think just digest everything that you've taken in tonight, meet in 2 weeks. We can do a quick walkthrough of the budget, just very high level. We don't have to get down into the weeds, but also answer any questions and follow-up questions that you might have.
does that sound good to the group?
Sure.
Times,
Can we meet in the evening?
in the evening works best for me.
Like,
So, and do I hear that we could invite you or?
Yep, just let me check my calendar. I should be okay.
You can also decide whether or not you want to be a virtual meeting.
Correct.
Yeah. Now, with this type of thing, could we discuss this type of thing by email, by email? Is that?
As far as setting the details of the
setting the-
10-12 meeting, or you set that now?
So for open meeting law, like as the chair, you would have to email everyone, but ask for the individual reply back. So that there's no
Yeah,
open
no reply at all.
deliberation.
Yeah.
Oh, so we cannot reply to
Yeah,
all.
never, the rule is never reply all.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
And I'm gonna add another rule. If something comes up in a meeting, you're talking about it, Sebastian, you hear about something because you go to the weekend thing.
Mhm.
You can inform your other board members, but you put at the beginning of the email, not for deliberation, information only.
I see, I see.
And when you get that, there's two things you can do in an email, respond or forget about it.
Yeah.
It's great when you see that, just read it, you're done.
Yeah, as long as you're not going back and forth.
I see.
You don't even
So-
say
so
thank
if,
you, you know?
If we CC all and express our opinion, it's considered deliberation.
Yeah,
Yes,
but even if you reply all, it suggests it, and
yeah,
then they start asking for your computers and your phones and all that stuff. So
yeah. And
we can talk about that offline.
And you'll see there's a
It's
lot
never
of
happened to me.
samples of the agenda, and it's your agenda as far as the format. One thing I wanted to, two things just point out on the agenda is normally you have to call the order. The chair calls the meeting to order. Generally, you have then the review and approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. You will also want to consider, and I think it's important, you won't see it as a unique agenda tonight, but as your standing agenda, you'll see with the select board, usually it's in the beginning. Some you'll see do it at the end. It's, have public input. In other words, so you have a specific agenda item, because we're in the public business, that affords the opportunity for the public, if they have, a question or something, within reason to address you. The last thing that we've increasingly seen, it's not, you'll see a lot of folks will put new business. So new business as this catch-all, any new items. On that, we want to put sort of new business and then, and I'll show samples. The new business should be items that were not anticipated for the posting. They generally should not, new business should not be action items with votes and so forth. Really, new business might be an opportunity for, then when you get to new business, is there any, the chair with any new business? Or for the next agenda, the topics, but just to stress under new business, you don't wanna. You have a action item unless it was absolutely, unforeseen. And you'll see samples of the FinCom agenda that Scott used, that format, in my opinion, worked well. You may want to, include that.
Yeah, you can always put things on your agenda and leave them there like,
Yes.
reserve fund transfers, but you don't have any, so you just skip over it. I mean, you could do that.
Okay, before we adjourn, just let me ask quickly, so that I was thinking of it afterwards, email to people, then I'm a little nervous about using email now. So now, I understand the fiscal year budget and the 5% of that, so the reserves fund, this has
That's-
no relation with that, right?
That's, no,
Yeah, you said that the reserve fund should not exceed 3% of tax levy, but neither of this number is actually tax levy, so there's no relation between this and the previous.
well,
If I
that is
may.
our tax, that is our budget, that.
Yeah, but the budget, is the budget, the tax levy is the same thing. So that you said that the
Yes,
reserve fund
yes.
not exceed 3% of tax levy is
Yeah,
free.
but-
For simplicity's sake, yeah.
Yes,
they're the
it
same.
could be right.
I see.
Yeah.
So then this
So,
thing,
you know, let's
so
not get into
so
one.
this number,
Yes,
this number should not exceed 3% of that.
5%.
5%.
Read
So-
read the next line.
It's the preceding year.
Yeah.
Yeah, the number,
Right, and that number down there is the 23 budget, 31 million or whatever it is.
yeah, so this is so this to me is like 1% of that, not 3% of that.
Right, it can only be,
The
I
cap.
see.
can only be capped at
Yeah, yeah.
5%.
Mhm.
So, yeah, no, I'm just trying to illustrate that. it's
Oh,
way
I
under
see.
that.
So why the 3% and 5% is one's for city, one's for
Correct.
town.
Yeah.
So the one
You'll
that's
see
applied to
that-
us is 5%.
Right,
Gotcha.
you'll see a lot of
Okay.
that.
So our reserve fund is much smaller than we allow.
Yes,
Correct.
and as Scott mentioned, at least in the last 12 years, the reserve fund up until the pandemic was historically, it didn't change, but around 150,000. There was 1 year, and he explained.
But was the budget always about this number? Was
No,
it
the budget was,
budget
also
growth.
the
small?
budget grows, yeah.
So when you say.
How the budget levy or the tax levy is calculated in a whole, that's a meeting in
Yeah,
itself.
so then the reserve fund
That we-
was,
That way.
when it was a smaller number, but it was still roughly like about 1% of the.
It was smaller and it was a
It was a higher percentage because, but we
step.
really, I think since Robert's been here, the budgeting process has been a lot more steady in making sure, holding the accounts, the departments accountable that they're budgeting correctly. You know, and plus, and I'll just say this, the town as a whole has actually we've seen our real estate value go up quite a bit over the last 12 years, so therefore our tax levy increases because it's based upon house valuation. So that has eased a lot of the pains that we had when I first joined. I mean, my first budget cycle, we were looking for $10,000 to get turnout gear for the fire department. I mean, like, we were at that dire straits financially back in 2008, 2009.
Mhm.
And as you know, as I said before, as our revenues have grown, the tax levy has grown. You know, the tax rate itself hasn't moved significantly. It's really just been the valuation of the real estate that's driven what our tax levy is. That as a community, we've been very cognizant of our spending to make sure that, you know, particularly around personnel increases, because personnel increases are a huge investment.
Yeah.
We've made sure that we haven't just been adding people left and right, you know, they're usually well thought out, well executed, you know, making sure that there is a certain need for this position, and that it's quantified.
And just to add, that's one of the key roles we will be discussing the reserve fund recommendation for FY 24 in more detail with the FinCom and the select board. It was increased, as I mentioned, largely because of the unknown variables with COVID. I'm pleased to report that we didn't have to, use all of that.
Okay, got it.
That's when it comes to-
Yes, so to
Oh, no.
sort of bring this to a close. So what we're looking at meeting then Wednesday, 10/12 at 5:30 PM.
I can get that, I don't know, event in my name.
Ah,
But I don't know, do I have to be here?
As long as you can get 3 per quorum, that's perfectly fine.
I
Well,
can
if
still
we
be.
do a Zoom, right?
well, we can do either in person or Zoom or both.
So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Robert, I think for a hybrid, I think quorum has to be at the table for a hybrid. And then you can have the Zoom interface at the same
Correct.
time.
Right.
Yeah, so my, I guess, information is, if you don't think you can all make it in person, is maybe to set it as a Zoom meeting just for ease of people's schedules.
Can we change it at every next meeting? We can change it to in person, or is it just set for the rest of the year?
So the select board kind of drives the decision process as to how the meetings run. And in the decision that the select board made was to let the committees and boards decide how they wanted to run their meetings themselves. But I don't know if there needs to be that level of consistency. So I think Robert missed the question. The question is, if they do a Zoom meeting for their next meeting, can they go back to in person and switch back and forth between those two?
Where you're new and getting reconstituted, yes. We will work with you to find that, to use your great word, cadence. So,
And
yeah.
if I may, I sit in many rooms at different times, and I'm going to be sitting in a room at 6 PM on the 12th, Wednesday the 12th, with another meeting here in town. And I think we're actually doing that one by Zoom. But I also have an understanding kind of what the schedule is of meetings. Thursday night, the day after that, 13th, I believe the room is empty. Planning board meets Tuesday, selectmen meet Tuesday nights every 2 weeks. Planning board meets the other Tuesday nights. Concom meets the Thursday nights on the off weeks from that meeting. So we try and figure out when we
I
can.
couldn't-
Yeah.
Tried to catch
So you
that.
guys, you guys might find that the 13th to 27th.
You didn't say when.
What I'm understanding is maybe we should.
13th and 27th would work for you.
Thursday,
Yeah.
October 13th at 5:30 in person here.
That was.
You will have a quorum of 3 in person.
Okay.
And you can always set the meetings later if you want, you know, it's-
So I'm what I'm hearing is that you to Zoom, maybe then. The high, we would have you attend via Zoom. Could we do that?
Yeah, I would like to attend, but I could only attend by Zoom.
Let me throw a curveball at you. Three of us can make it.
Mhm.
She can make it on Zoom. Is she allowed to vote?
I don't have one. I get not. I'm just interested.
Why don't
in
you think
learning.
about that? Get back to me, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I know how we've done it other places and they have voted, so.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, so you could, see, nothing's ever super easy. You could, so as long as there's a quorum in this room,
Physically in the room.
physically in the room, that includes the chair. In this case, I know this is what it said, you could meet. Jin could participate by Zoom. Any votes will have to be by roll call. So if you're all here in person and it's just an in-person meeting, it's moved and seconded, all those in favor just say aye.
Yeah.
But when it's hybrid or in this remote, you do the roll call, so the public knows who's voting what. So you could do that. You could do, as long as there's a quorum here.
Would that be, I would just. Personally, so is the in-persons, because we're gonna be doing paper, would be a good way to tend towards. But we can do, so what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I
is
really appreciate it. So,
Yeah, so for
this is
Thursday-
not a long-term thing, but it's sort of.
Thursday, October 13th, 5:30, hybrid.
That will be good.
Fine by me.
Okay, and then I would prepare an agenda and then post that by Tuesday.
Yeah, preferably probably like Friday or something.
48
Yeah, it's 48 hours. I would recommend trying to get it 3 days ahead of time to the clerk, just so you don't run into any issues. The other thing is you also have to be cognizant of holidays when town hall is closed, just when you're posting. So I think-
Mr. Yes,
Like Columbus Day, this is like
Yeah,
a Monday.
That's that one,
Yeah.
but that should be fine.
Yeah, and earlier the better.
and
Oh,
Mr.
it's-
Chair, I'll send to you the procedure, or you'll all get it on an agenda. We actually, it's very easy, so. And if there's any questions, let Carly or I know. The other point too, because nobody except the moderator seems to, and Carly keeps the schedule so well. Always Carly Antonella, assistant town manager, she keeps the master schedule of all of the rooms. So you can always just beam her an email or give her a quick call if you're looking to have a meeting and she'll hook you up.
And next time you're walking Trina by the house, Kurt,
Yes.
I can help you with that one too.
Okay. Trina is my daughter.
And even though Carly keeps track, Cindy knows what's going on.
So you're looking at Thursday, October 13th, for a hybrid meeting at 5:30.
Correct.
Sounds good.
All right, and then I would work up the agenda then.
Get back from Chess. I can email you, but not everyone for an agenda item.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
All right, then I guess to me, I think part of the agenda would be just like trying to figure out how to work this.
We will also have, Mr. Chair, for your next meeting, we'll have name tags with your title, nameplates, so.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
Columbus.
And I think Scott also mentioned a key point, just so you that all know. We want you to get all of the information. We want you to get all of the training. We belong to the Mass Municipal Association as well as the finance group, which you're members of. There's a conference also in January. If there are topics we'll be sending to you, not required, things you want to go to, let's make that happen as we move forward, because the more informed you are, as Scott said, as we all are, the better we're all on that.
Yeah, I think the ATFC,
Yeah.
meeting in early November, if you can make it, is just amazing information. So you can get there. I think don't quote me on
We'll
it.
send
It's the
it.
first
Yeah.
week, I think it's the fifth or the sixth, whatever that's.
It's typically less than a full day. And it has morning sessions, sometimes afternoon sessions. You get together for lunch, it's kind of a cafeteria lunch. You get to meet lots of different people. You did this for 10 years. I may have been at the last one, the first one you were at. Because I was on a finance committee in another town 12 years, 10 years ago. So,
If it's at Franklin, it was always at the Tri-County Technical High School.
Mhm.
And he says his cafeteria food, the food's fantastic.
No, it's good.
The students cook it, and it's
they're
fantastic.
like they like have a hotel program. No, it's good. It's good. It's just meeting people, and you get to meet people from other towns, big towns, small towns, and you hear what they're up against. And it's just normal life. It's great.
Yes, motion to adjourn
I'll second that.
and,
Control person, you should do the math. Aye, or yay or nay, right?
all in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye.
I-
So